Hello Gobs and welcome to the second episode of Final Fantasy Gob's Adventure. I'm still calling it that because no one has said anything about the title, so that's what I'm going to keep calling it until someone comes up with something better. As usual, if this is the first time you're seeing this video, which I don't know why you're starting on episode 2, but YouTube algorithm is wonky. But if this is your first time seeing this episode, I'm the Goblin King. I do RPG stuff, both video game and tabletops. I talk, review, and play about them all. So, if that interests you, go ahead, subscribe, become a gob. Anyways, on with episode 2 of the series, where I am playing all the Final Fantasies 1 through 15, excluding 11 and 14. They will get their own videos. I know they're not going to be in-depth reviews, but I will do a video about them, don't worry. And I'm trying to keep the intro short, so I'm going to get straight into breaking down the review system, because today, episode 2, we are reviewing Final Fantasy 2. I don't have any preamble, so let's just get straight into it. I beat the game recently, so while everything's so fresh on my mind, I want to try to get it out. So everything might not be entirely formulated, but we are going to go ahead and do it anyway, classic Goblin style. So, if you're new to my reviews, here's how I do it. I break down the review into 5 sections with a couple extra. We start with visuals, animations, graphics. We move on to gameplay, mechanics. Then we have sound design, music, and voice acting, which I generally should split up into 2, but I keep it as 1 because sound design and voice acting isn't that really big to me, and music is super big to me, so this section's worth 2 gold coins as opposed to all the other sections that are worth 1, so that's how I do it. That's just a personal thing. I love music, it's just a big thing about me. And then finally we have writing. After this, I go on to demerits or merits. It's anything so abhorrent or so awesome about the game that I give it extra gold coins or take extra coins away. And then we have the final rating and final thoughts, such as would I recommend it and any extra notes that just don't fit in with the other sections. I want to clarify that this review isn't trying to get 5 out of 5 means this is the best game ever. 5 out of 5 is my bare minimum. If the game gets a 5 out of 5, then it's just a okay game. It's a good game with nothing too outstanding. With this, I want the games to get above 5. I want them to stand out and get more gold coins, so the more gold coins they get over 5 out of 5, the better the game is. Sometimes a game will get 4 out of 5 or even 3 out of 5. Doesn't mean it's a bad game, it's just an okay game with some really abhorrent stuff that I dislike. Remember, 5 out of 5 isn't a perfect score. These games should get above 5 out of 5. So, with the sections broken down, let's get right into our review. One last final thing before I get into it. This is opinionated content. I say this all the time. Just because I like something about the game and you don't, doesn't mean anything. If I say something's crap and you love it, then that's perfectly fine. And if it, irks you that much, then leave a comment down below. I will usually try to reply to every comment. Anything that will spark a conversation. I love reading comments and I love replying to comments. With all that out of the way, let's get into today's Final Fantasy Gob's Adventure Episode 2. We will be reviewing Final Fantasy 2, like I said previously. Let's get started with our game intro. Now, I am playing these in order, so I will be comparing Final Fantasy 2 to Final Fantasy 1, but I'm trying to not let that impact me. I don't want to award Final Fantasy 2 any extra gold coins just because of the improvement it is to Final Fantasy 1. But since I am playing these in order, I will compare Final Fantasy 2 to Final Fantasy 1 when it's appropriate. I might give it a gold coin for improvements, but I really don't want to because I want to review it as if you just picked up this game without playing any of the others. That's kind of how I want to review this, but I am still going to compare it to Final Fantasy 1, and then I'm sure I'll compare Final Fantasy 3 to Final Fantasy 2 and 1, and pretty much all of them up until we get to the 3D ones. Like 7 and 4, not the remakes. I know 3 and 4 have remakes, but I meant since I am playing the pixel remaster of these games, which copy the original Famicom version. I think it even takes out some censored quotation scenes that they did whenever they translated it to USA. But for the most part, I'm playing the Pixel Remasters to add some features, such as a gallery, a music box, auto battle, maps, and diagonal walking. It also takes the music and rearranges it. I went over a lot of this in my first video, so I'm going to try to keep those notes light in this episode, but I'll tell you whenever I'm talking about the Pixel Remaster. Final Fantasy II was released in Japan in 1988 and would later on get a worldwide release. Now, being released in 1988, it's just 5 years after the first Final Fantasy. We have Hironobu Sakaguchi coming back as the director, as well as Nobuo, I think that's how you say it, Nobuo Uematsu coming back as the lead composer for the game. Now, with Final Fantasy I, I did give a little bit into the development, but Final Fantasy II, there was nothing really that stood out from it. So that's it for a little description about the game. Just a recurring director, composer, 5 years after Final Fantasy I. Let's get into our first section. Visuals, animations, graphics. Now, one of the first improvements you'll see in this series, I kind of want to get this out of the way, but comparing it to Final Fantasy I, this has the introduction of lots of new elements. Like I said in my first one, I said there was no Final Fantasy classic monsters in FF1. So, when it comes to Final Fantasy II, we start to see those monsters. As you'll see here, we have bombs, coils, we even have the Behemoth, Malboros. You get the idea. Classic Final Fantasy monsters are showing up here. The game's all still more solid. Within FF1, we have the classic little sprites, and then they became the big sprites, which I don't like the big sprites. But here we have designed characters, and I love these little character designs. They don't ever change throughout the game, which is great. No flashbangs to whatever those guys were in the first one. So I love these little sprites. Pixel Remaster adds magical effects. We see those here. But one thing to note, which I'll touch up in the gameplay, but as your magic spells level up, each sets of levels from 1 through 16, so like 1 through 3 and 4 through 6, all have different effects that get more powerful and more bombastic as you level up the spells. Just one thing to note, I thought that was pretty cool. As far as the style, we start to see Final Fantasy taking on its more own style. I mean, it is 5 years after the first one, so we start to see more stylized. It's not entirely there yet, but we are starting to see that here. I don't really like the map design. That's just a little nitpick, but personally, I don't really like the map. There's just something off about it. As far as the animations and all that go, I mean, nothing much has improved. We do see some more cutscenes. In the first one, there was only like 4 cutscenes, and this one has like 8 or 10 or even more cutscenes. There's a lot of cutscenes in this game, which I think is fantastic. I really enjoy how story intensive this one is compared to the first one. But it is 5 years afterwards. So as far as graphics, visuals, and animations go, there's nothing that like draws my ire. I mean, I loved how more stylized it is compared to the first one. And I do like the character designs, and nothing's abhorrent, nothing's grosses me out or anything. I think everything looks perfectly fine. So this section will get a gold coin. Let's move on to our probably biggest category, which is gameplay and mechanics. I'm not going to go in depth as I did in the first one. I'm trying to keep these videos shorter because I am playing through these. I'm trying to knock them out as fast as I can before the Magic the Gathering Final Fantasies released, I think, in the summer or sometime around there. I hope it's later on because I'm still playing through these. So anyways, now for being the second in the series, they sure did something drastic. They wanted to really set themselves apart from the first one. So instead of having levels, you instead have no levels. There's like no levels at all in the thing besides weapon levels and magic levels, but your characters don't go from level 1 to 99. Instead, weapons and magic that they use have individual levels. The more levels they have, the stronger the thing gets. Such as, with weapon levels, the more they leveled up, the more hits they do. In the original game, Final Fantasy I, the higher your accuracy, the more hits you got out of it. Whereas in this one, the higher your level, the more hits you get out of it. So at level 8, they are doing 8 hits, whereas at level 1, they only do 1 hit. And that's the unique thing about this game. Why is it like this? Because there are no classes. Every character that you have in the game is basically a blank slate besides Minwoo, who has a bunch of spells tagged onto him. But everybody else that you get in the game don't really have, they have higher stats than others, but if you spend some time in battles just leveling up specific stats by doing certain things, such as taking damage levels up your stamina and health, hitting really hard to hit creatures levels up your agility and attack and strength, using white magic levels up your spirit and your magic, while using black magic also levels up your magic but levels up your intellect instead. So there's all these sorts of things that you can do to level up your skills in battle. So in the first one, where you have XP and eventually in a dungeon you sort of, you level up, the XP becomes basically meaningless because it's not enough to level you up anymore. Whereas here, almost every single battle will level up a skill. Eventually, as the monsters have ranks, so eventually as your weapon levels get to a certain level, they won't level up because you're not fighting a higher ranked monster. You do eventually have a soft cap on it, but once you progress through the game, you find more difficult enemies and your weapon levels will start leveling up again. So random encounters, as tedious as I might think they are, almost every single random encounter will usually level up something on your characters. Now, as I said here, comparing it to Final Fantasy 1, had the levels, it had fire, Fyra, Viagra, so let's get into the magic. How is magic in this one? Well, we see the loss of spells like Fyra and Viagra in place. Using the fire spell as an example, you have fire level 1. It does little damage, but if you, as you can see on screen, if you click L2 or click over, you can eventually select all enemies at no cost in the increase MP. You might think, oh, maybe it doubles the MP, but it doesn't. What it does is it weakens the spell's effect. So rather than doing a bunch of fire damage to one enemy, you do little fire damage to all enemies. And now this is also true for white spells such as Cure and Protect. Whereas Cure can heal one person's HP a lot, using it to select all your party members heals each party member's health by a little. Same thing with Protect. You start to get the idea. Spell on a single enemy or single person is really good. Spell spread across the party and the enemies are weaker, but you get to hit everybody. And that's really good for like life, which if one person goes down, you can select life and you can full revive your team with one spell that's usually going to cost 1 or 2 MP. I really enjoy this system, and it might think that maybe spells are weaker in this, but in the first one there was like 1 or 2 enemies that were weak to magic and everything else took physical damage. Whereas in this game you start to see higher physical resistance, which means magic is more prevalent, especially the final boss, who I could not do any physical damage to. I could do a little, but I basically had to rely on Ultima and Flare and just kept Ultima and flaring him until they died. So magic is really good. So in the previous game you would have to buff the crap out of your warrior. Here you buff your team and then just keep using magic. Let your whoever you just dictate as your physical person. Like I said, there's no classes. So everybody on your team can be something separate as you train their skills and their levels, which is really cool, but then the gimmick starts to wear off because they don't get different commands from each other. It's just like, this person's really good with swords, this one's really good with axe, this one casts black spells, this one casts white spells, and that's it. They don't learn like new commands like in Final Fantasy VII. You get like all the different materias to give them different commands or summons or spells. Whereas here, they don't really get anything new. So it's a cool system that I like, but again, once you're in a dungeon and the only thing that you're leveling up is your health, which is still good, but you rather see your other stuff level up, but you're lost in the dungeon and all your levels have equal to the ranks that the monsters you're fighting, so they don't go up. So it can get super tedious with the random encounters. Speaking of random encounters, like in the first one, if Final Fantasy is random encounters the game, then Final Fantasy 2 is empty room the game. With the first one, you have the Pixel Remaster, which gives you the map. And that one, you could walk inside one of the small rooms that's on the map, and you can use your map to see all the other rooms. So you can see if a room had a treasure chest or an empty space. This is completely different in this one, where you can see what's not going to be a through path, which is helpful. You can't see what's inside a room. So if you walk inside a room, you won't know if the other rooms are empty or not, because each room map is separated from all the other rooms. This basically makes you end up walking around because you don't want to miss out on any loot. So you walk across all the way across the map to this room, empty. And then the next one, empty. And empty. It's all empty. Almost every single room in this game's empty, but you can't leave them unchecked because sometimes they'll have chests with really good items and sometimes they'll have really crappy items. But for the most part, you don't want to miss them. So instead of having mazes, they just put rooms spread across the dungeon map, so you're exploring the entire dungeon. Pretty smart, but again, random counters can start to get tedious. Luckily, we have auto battle in the Pixel Remaster. You want more about that, go watch that first Final Fantasy 1 video. But I love the map, and I love the auto battle, and I still love them here. Now, you might be wondering, oh, is Poison back? Well, in the first one I said Poison, they let it end after battle in the series going forward. Whereas in the first one, Poison sucks. Well, here, Poison does wear off after battle, but then they introduce Venom, which is basically a more potent poison that lasts after battle. Luckily, it's not as bad here because, unlike in the first one, not every enemy inflicts Venom, and you won't see it often. Even then, Gil is really easy to get in this game, so you can buy antidotes for super cheap, or you could get Usana, which costs 1 MP or 2, depending on how much you use it, which cures Venom instantly. So it's not as annoying as in the first one. It's still here, and it can still be annoying, but it's so easily cured, and not every enemy does it. Good job, developer. That's a great improvement compared to the first one. Editing gob number 2 here. I forgot to talk about formations. In the game, you basically have a front row, back row, and you can set your units and switch between it. People in the back row take less damage, but they cannot deal the normal amount of damage. They basically deal like half damage with melee weapons. So you can give them a bow or just make them magic base. While units in the front deal full melee damage, but they take all the damage, obviously. And you can switch it using the formation command in the menu, or you can use the command during battle to also switch their formation. So in the previous one, Final Fantasy 1, you had attack, magic, items, defend, and flee. Side note, still don't use defend. I probably used it once. But yeah, all the commands are the same. They're all self-explanatory. Except in this one, they have row, which basically lets your character switch between what row they're in. Well, it never really came up that much. I never really cared about which row my characters were in, so it wasn't a big thing. But I just wanted to touch up on that. I think I forgot to do it in the original section. So this is editing gob number 2 out of here. Bye. Now let's talk about the map. We have the world map, town maps, dungeon maps, and then the battle scene. Same as the first one, nothing new here, except for traveling. Traveling, you start out on foot, and then eventually you very quickly get the canoe, which lets you go across rivers, and then you can pay for a ship across the sea. You can go into this one town and buy an airship from Sid. Hey, Sid's here, the reoccurring character throughout Final Fantasies. He's also here. So you talk to Sid, and then you can go and buy an airship ticket. It's one way, so if you fly to that town, you have to find another way to get back to wherever you're going. And eventually, you do get a boat, and you do get the airship. But the airship is not as important in this game as it is in the first one. Because in the first one, you get it like halfway through. Even earlier than halfway through. Then they kind of put trees around all the towns in the late game, so you have to park way off, so they still make you walk to it. Here, you get the airship, and you only really need it to get to 2 locations. But if you did want to go and touch up on another dungeon, grab some chests you missed or something, then the airship's really good. But if you're just going it straight through, then the airship's not super important as the ship is. I mean, but you're on the ship for a good length of the game, and then you're barely on the airship at all. There is one thing that has shown up here that I was very excited to see, and that was chocobos. Chocobos show up in the series, and they are cute as ever. Don't look at the original artwork. Do not look at those disgusting, hideous creatures. Look at this cute little guy. When you're on a chocobo, you get the classic chocobo music, and you don't encounter enemies, and you run across the world map faster. But as soon as you disembark from the chocobo, you lose the chocobo, and there's only one place in the entire map that you find it. And I didn't even bother to pick it up because I just went straight for my ship. I'm gonna be honest, I had to go back and find the chocobos because I was using a guide. Yes, I'll admit I was using a guide, but I did go back and grab a chocobo, and that's what you're seeing here. Dang! It's shaking its tail feathers, bro! Autosave. We see the Pixel Remaster has autosave back, which I regrettably did have to use. I was floor 6 in, and I was fighting, it was Corals. I didn't know. Usually Corals in later games, they just have lightning whiskers that stun you. Here, they do stun your entire team, or they have a chance to, but they also inflict instant death. Even if they do no damage to your character, they can instantly die, and it makes the end game so awful because you encounter wave after wave after wave of Corals. I hate these things. I'm not even going to say the name right if I'm saying it wrong. But these things make it absolutely awful, and I was so close to taking a gold coin away from the section because of freaking Corals. They're so stupid. I hate instant death gimmicks. It doesn't make the game harder. I mean, it does make the game harder. But you know what I mean. It's very, very cheap trick. But I'm not going to take a gold away. It's just a stupid little nitpick. With Final Fantasy II, comparing it to 1, we see the introduction of party members joining your team. So throughout the game, you keep your main 3 characters on the screen, and then you'll get other members such as Minwoo here, you get Joseph who's a monk, Layla who's a pirate, and so on forth. There's a bunch of characters that join your team, and they are also technically blank slates. They do start off with equipment, some of them have spells, and they do start off with stats, but for the most part they have nothing. Minwoo's about the most stacked character that you'll get. I don't like Minwoo in my party because I feel like it's very cheap, but I can understand why they did it. I just don't enjoy it. I just rather have him be just basic white spells rather than having these level 7 white spells. But the joining the party thing kind of sucks because you don't want to dump like your good spells onto them. You don't want to have to spend the time leveling up their spells when you've already leveled up your main party spells. I always defaulted them to making them marshals because you just don't know when they're going to leave in the story, and the new person you get won't have any of the old things you get. You get the equipment back, but any spells on them you don't have, and if they never join your party again, it kind of makes you not want to level up anything on them. Because if you spend all this time leveling up the spells, then you're spending way more time in this game to beat it. So it's better just to make them marshals, just slap some equipment on them and let them go. I think that about does it for gameplay and mechanics. Again, I went way in depth in the Final Fantasy 1 video, and I'm not doing that here. I want this video to be short. I mean, it's still detailed, but I want it to be not as long as that one. That was a pain in the butt to edit. It was fun to edit. I loved it. It was probably one of my greater videos, but I'm trying to keep these videos not super short. This one's obviously going to be longer than my normal videos, I think. So for the most part, I really enjoy how characters are blank slates and you can kind of do whatever you want with them. Like this big dumb guy, whose name is Guy. That's canonically. You can name him whatever, but his official name right there is Guy. Of course, in the GBA version, they called it Gus, but whatever. He's supposed to be this big, dumb idiot guy, but you can go and give him a bunch of black spells and then just level the crap out of his intellect. So now he's extremely smart, but he's so dumb. I guess. The personalities aren't entirely the greatest. I've never been a big fan of the big, dumb guy, but that's for writing. That's for writing if I ever touch up in it writing. I like the level up system. I like there's no overall levels, there's only individual levels, and it kind of makes it feel like a sandboxy, kind of like Skyrim, which I'm bringing up again in this one. Skyrim, you start out as a blank slate. I mean, you get your race stats, but for the most part, you can kind of just go and do whatever you want with your character. You can go two-handed, make them a mage, make them a thief, or if you play the game long enough, they eventually become everything. So it's kind of like this in this game. Everyone can be whatever they want. Of course, as you go on, you start to allot things. So you make one your white mage and one your black mage, and this guy's the warrior, and then the fourth party members, whatever they show up as. Sometimes they are marshals, and sometimes you get a Minwu. I'm not going to touch up on the Pixel Remaster features. I've already said it in the Final Fantasy one, so go check that out. And I really like the gameplay and mechanics here. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. I'm sure I'm going to kick myself in the butt later for it. Regardless, this section is going to get a gold coin. And we're going to move on. Sound design, voice acting, and music. Now, if you've seen these reviews every single time, I tell you, sound design is for sounds that suck or missing, and that's it. Sound design, I'm not going to be too picky unless there's an extremely annoying sound, or if there's no sounds when there should be sounds. So the sound design of this game's great. I like the fire effects. I love the high level Ultima spells, which I now gotta go record that. But I like it nonetheless. I just love big boomy sounds, big burst. There's no super annoying sounds. Whenever an enemy dies or like a boss dying, it always feels great when you hear that. I don't know what to call it, an eruption sound, I guess. So the sound design is okay, it's good. There's nothing offensive about it. No voice acting, still the game, still it's 88. Of course there's not going to be any voice acting. The Pixel Remaster does add choirs to the music, so let's get into the music. Overall, I like the battle theme. I think it's probably one of the best in the series, but I think that's only because of Final Fantasy 14. So if there's anything I like about 14, it's going to be the music, but it'll get its own video way later on. But I like the battle theme. The victory theme's pretty standard. I think it's exactly the same thing from the first one. The one thing I hate is the boss theme. The boss theme just doesn't do it for me. It sucks. It plain out sucks. And boss themes should be high energy, on the edge, should be intense, and it's kinda nothing. The town music's okay. I really love when the Emperor shows up, which should be playing, but he has his own like theme whenever he shows up, and it's really awesome. And I really love Pandemonium, the ending game music there is so cool. The final boss music, it's cool. It's not like the best in the series. I think it's better than the first one. It was cool at first, and then the boss sort of got annoying, and then the music gets annoying. But for the most part, the music overall is good, but that boss theme, it really hurts. The Pixel Remaster kind of comes in clutch. Now, as opposed to Final Fantasy 1, I do like the 8-bit music. I found myself turning on the 8-bit, or I guess it's not 8-bit, it's more the classic music, whatever came out on the Famicom at the time, or at least what was released in America, or the Famicom wasn't in America. You get the idea. I don't think it's true 8-bit, but I do love the original tracks, and the Pixel Remaster tracks make them so much better. So I just have to give this music section 2 gold coins. And let's move on to our next section. Writing. If there's one thing that has improved from the first game going to the second one, is the intensive writing. Now the first one, I'm not going to go through and did what I did in the first video. In the first video I sat down and gave you the entire synopsis of what was happening in the game. It was a good bit to me. I think it was a funny bit. I'm not doing it here. This game takes about, I want to say 10 to 20 hours to beat. I think 10 is like a good, you know exactly what you're doing, and you know exactly how to level up your team in a specific way to help you get through the game. But just to give you some leeway, I think the game takes anywhere from 15 to 20 hours to beat, as opposed to Final Fantasy 1, which I can assure you takes 10 without using boosts or anything. Moving on to whatever else I was talking about. I recorded this after the video, so. The main story of this game is, well, we see the introduction of the Empire as an overarching power. which will become a recurring thing later on in the series. Essentially, you're playing as the rebels fighting back against the Empire and its Emperor, who has been summoning demons from hell. So now you have to slowly gather your forces, gather your power to fight against the Empire. So in the beginning of the game, you get to name 4 characters. Spoilers! Here's your spoiler warnings. But you name these 4 characters, but that 3rd one never shows up, because whenever he dies, they talk about how he gets captured. And throughout the entire game, you never see him until you kill the Emperor, and then that character becomes Emperor, which the reveal for that is pretty awesome. That cutscene where it's revealed that he's you kind of know who it is. I mean, it's not like it's a big reveal, but that scene where he's like talking about power and all that, and then the Emperor that you just killed revives himself, and he's even stronger now, and now you're kind of pushed with that 4th character to form the final team for the game. And it's so awesome. The story for this game, well, it's annoying at parts because you constantly have to go back to the princess. I mean, you go here, back to the princess, here, back to the princess. The princess sends you to this guy. Then you go back to the princess. Then you go here, back to the princess. And you just keep going back to the princess who's leading the rebellion. I get it, but it's super annoying. But with this, introduces what is called the password setting, which I could have put in the gameplay mechanics, but it's more for the writing. As you talk to characters, you will learn key items that show up in red. Learn it, then you can talk to them about it. You take them to specific characters, tell them the keyword, and that kind of progresses the story. I like it as opposed to just talking to them and moving on without having to do anything. It kind of builds a puzzle, but again, like in Final Fantasy 1, you can talk to the townsfolk to learn clues about what you need to do next, talk to people, re-ask them key items, and that's a really cool system. I think the writing for this game is good. We see more personality in the main characters. I mean, for Therion, however you pronounce his name, I have no idea how to pronounce him. He's the main character. Him and they're a bit bland, but Guy, he's your big dumb guy. Leon's he's kind of like your protagonist in later games. They're just essentially like a moody teenager, in my opinion. But then we have Minwu, who's down to earth. We have Joseph. We have the coward Gideon, who would go on to become the prince. We have Layla, the pirate, who talks in an accent. I have no idea what the accent is. Don't at me. But we start to see more personality in the characters. There's not a lot of side quests. I think there's one where you can go look Excalibur. But again, it's the 88. They're not going to have the memory to put in side quests. So they just focused on a really intense main story, and it's really good. People die, characters that people really died. There's whole villages getting wiped out in the end game, and it's awesome. For the story at the time, seeing it from Final Fantasy 1 was just this really simple story to this. It's really nice, and I can't wait to see what Final Fantasy 3 will have. There was moments where I got goosebumps, especially when you're talking to the Emperor in the late game. It's really good. The ending is like super short. Like in the last one, you got like a whole scroll wheel, but here you kind of you get like one image, not even like of the characters or anything. You get like one line of text, and it's like, the 4 heroes have brought peace again. And then the game just ends. Which is okay, perfectly fine. The endings I'm never too big about anyway, so I'm like, whatever. But overall, the story is pretty great compared to the first one. Again, it is annoying that you have to go back and forth to the princess and all that, but seeing the characters die, kinda, it really pulls on your heartstrings at time. And again, there's moments where I got goosebumps, and if a story can do that, it's pretty good. But overall, we're just going to give it a gold coin and move on to our final section. Now, for merits and demerits, I really want to give it, for how much of an improvement it is to the first Final Fantasy, I really want to give it a gold coin. But I just can't bring myself to do it. It feels really cheesy. I mean, 5 out of 5 is already an okay score. Like I said, guys, remember, 5 out of 5 doesn't mean like Game of the Year stuff. It just means it's an okay game. I know my review system might be a bit weird, but that's just how I do it. games should get more than 5 out of 5, and I can't find myself to give it that extra gold coin, because if you never played Final Fantasy 1, then you would never know of any of these improvements. So I can't honestly give it a gold coin. I'm just judging it based on the stuff that's inside the game. Moving on to our final rating, it gets 5 out of 5 gold coins. It's okay, it's a good game. Would I recommend it? Yes, I will recommend it. Pixel Remaster, as always. Of course, you can play the original, but I think the Pixel Remasters are far more better. I just love the map features, so awesome. The auto battle features, super great. I love auto battle. There's a lot of times where just, random encounters, I want to say you get used to it, but not really. It starts to get annoying, especially, like I said, when you're just traveling to the edge of the map and going inside blank room after blank room, then random encounters get super annoying. But overall, it's an okay game. It's a good game. Second in the series, 5 out of 5. I really want to go back, and because I was chatting with someone in my first comment on the first video, and they kind of opened my eyes, and I think I have to give Final Fantasy 1 4 out of 5. For a standalone game, I just don't think the gameplay is that riveting. The auto battle feature really helps, but without it, I can't really see myself to play the original. I think I could play this original. I think I could play Final Fantasy 2 by itself on like original hardware or on the GBA. It'd be perfectly fine. But the first Final Fantasy, I think I would just loathe it. So I'm going to dock down Final Fantasy 1 from 5 coins to 4 coins. And put Final Fantasy 2 at 5 out of 5. There's the improvement gold coin, I guess. That can be included. That can be counted as an improvement. I don't know if I did this at the end of the other video. I thought I put Final Fantasy 1 at like the 7th mark or something, like right in the middle. But if I had to, comparing it from 1 to 14, because we're leaving out 11 and 14. Remember, video coming later, okay? I know a lot of people love 14, but that video is coming later for it. So going from 1 to 14, I put Final Fantasy 1 right at 7, which I think I'm gonna drop it down to like 10, and then put Final Fantasy 2 at 7. I don't know. We're still super early in the series, so if you want to keep seeing these videos and see what I think about the next ones, which, who knows, maybe I'll just keep giving them 5 out of 5s, who knows, maybe they're just all okay games and nothing's ever going to, like, get more than 6 coins until we get to, like, 7 or 10. If that interests you, then I am going to keep continuing this series, so leave a like, comment down below what you think about it. I know my review system isn't the best. I am still working out the kinks, but that's gonna be the main goal of these videos, is to help me facilitate a better review. I'm trying to review things more critically, I guess, but for this series, I feel like 5 out of 5 is a pretty okay score. It's a pretty good using my review system. It didn't do anything out of the ordinary. I mean, comparing it to the first one, it did, but just as standalone, it's good. There's nothing awful about it, and there's nothing awesome about it. It's just right in the middle at 5 out of 5. Comment your guys' opinions or critiques, and I will be glad to have a talk in the comments with you. I do enjoy reading comments and all that. So subscribe, like, comment, all that stuff. Even share it if you want. I share it to all my social media. What social media, you might be wondering? Well, I got Twitter, which you can find in the description. I post updates from there, but now I switched to my updates to the community chat. Then I have a Reddit where I post my videos. I haven't done anything there yet because, well, we don't have anybody there. If you guys ever want to put anything for me, you can always just go to the Reddit and upload it there. I generally don't care what you put in a Reddit as long as it follows the guidelines or whatever. You guys know what to do. It's social media, so there's my plugins, and I think that's about it. So stay tuned for more series. I am playing Final Fantasy 3 next, and we'll see how long that takes me. I hope you guys have a lap of a day. See you on the next adventure. Oh yeah, thanks for watching the video. I forgot to say that.